As real estate development threatens to push out New Yorkers from their homes, planners are scrambling to find solutions that will stop displacement, such as mandatory inclusionary zoning and community board preferences in housing lotteries. But will these policies only further residential segregation? Planning theory helps us make sense of the planning practice. We can say, the world as we currently see it is not working, and we can do something about it. Or we can say, the way that we are currently planning is doing more damage than good to the people we claim to plan for. Advocacy planning and equity planning help contextualize the extent of segregation in New York City, where it has pushed us forward and where it may have fallen short, and where the planner, that's you and me, plays in all of this. I worked with predominantly Spanish-speaking immigrants looking for housing as an advocate at a Bronx-based domestic violence agency. The organization developed as a response to the lack of resources available to Latina immigrant victims of domestic violence in 1970s and 1980s New York. It was believed that domestic violence survivors, regardless of difference, had a right to a safe home. Its mission was to empower and uplift women, and through their advocacy made domestic violence a status as a protected class in the New York City human rights laws. And like advocate planners, we worked alongside survivors to advocate on their behalf on expanding entry to homeless shelters, access to emergency rental assistance and rental subsidies, while at the same time developing alternative plans with the women that still kept their safety and right to shelter in mind. Our advocacy scope was so specific. We did not recognize segregation and housing discrimination on the housing market when the women we worked with brought up their stories. The most common complaint from the women wasn't just that landlords were refusing to accept their vouchers, it was that those who did place them in inadequate or overcrowded housing. Within a constraining system, it was hard to move at all, nor could we easily tell what they were even being discriminated on. As Piven observes in her critiques of advocacy planning, incorporating groups into a predefined form of participation did not empower the women at all, and it made us the experts in a power imbalance. And it did not acknowledge the complexities of their lives to fully take form and acknowledge that their inability to access the housing market had deeper roots. Cromwell would acknowledge that at the site where domestic violence and discrimination intersected would be those who have few, if any, choice. It was evident that these women, like many other New Yorkers seeking housing, didn't have any choice at all. After my time at a DV agency, I went to work at a nonprofit civil rights agency focused on fair housing laws to better understand the extent of segregation and possible solutions. Over this past summer, we assessed who truly benefited from the placement of New York City and New York State's low-income housing tax credits, or LIHTC for short, often used in the development of affordable housing units. As it turned out, there was no incentive for city and state allocation plans, nor for the developers to equitably distribute the credits throughout the metropolitan area, keeping these units in already low-resource pockets of the city and accounting for a sizable portion of segregation. We got a variety of community organizations together, some working on affordable housing and some working on fair housing, but both agreeing that New York City's housing crisis was rooted in segregation. We wanted to make the case for why pushing for equitable reforms and redistribution within the LIHTC allocation plans mattered for all of them. After a period of research, collecting GIS data, and collaborations with community organizations, we submitted comments to the head of the LIHTC program in New York City. But whether or not they will be implemented is unknown, even with additional pressure from these grassroots groups supporting the changes we recommended. Bates and Zapata, as well as Cromwell himself, talk about one thing that does stop equity planning in its tracks: political. In our case, these allocation plans, which should have been updated annually, were years old. And had our group not done some research, many groups would not have known that they were even allowed to comment on the plans, given that there was no public announcement. Advocacy planning and equity planning in New York City have ensured that we see housing as a human right. And understanding the theory also helps us understand why anti-displacement policies might do more harm than good if it doesn't actually change the history of segregation in the city. Different planning theories can serve as an archive of our society's histories, and just how far has it changed as we continue to search for a just future, in David Off's words. Since advocacy planning and equity planning focus on the planner's position and awareness of societal inequality, this puts the planner, that's me, and that's you, in a position to be a part of societal transformation. And while they have their setbacks, they also continue to push us forward to strive for a future accessible to all and imagine more possibilities, where the planner and non planner are both implicated in this struggle.